Hello, in this video we're going to take a look at how to split a SharePoint list. Now what I mean when I say split a SharePoint list, I'm talking about creating a copy of a SharePoint list where we're not copying the records, we're just setting up another container so that we can then take, say, half of the records in the original list and move them over to the copy of that list, and then I have two identical lists. They have the same fields and everything. Why would I want to do that? Well, in SharePoint there is the list view threshold, which is 5,000 items, and that's locked in SharePoint Online. And it is true, we can create different views, and as long as those views are less than 5,000 records, normally everything should display fine in SharePoint. However, you tend to run into some problems and limitations when your SharePoint lists grow past 5,000 records, especially in SharePoint Online. And in order to manage that, it can help you to split up that list. And so we're going to walk through a process. I'm going to show you how you can take those large lists and set off a process to make a copy of that and effectively split it out. So for example, if you had a list with, say, 20,000 records in it, you could go ahead and create copies of that list set up and then move the records over and divide it into multiple lists, each of them being less than 5,000 records. And that will help solve some other headaches that you might run into with SharePoint. So now let's jump into it. I'm going to show you how to split up a SharePoint list. Let's get SharePoint smart. Alright, here I am in my SharePoint Online site. So for the demonstration, I'm just going to take a very small data set because of course we don't want to wait around for the process. Everything I show, it's going to be the same whether the list is in our practice 100 records or you have 20,000 or more. It's exactly the same process to split that up. So linked below the video, I've got a practice Excel file you can use, and you can do this practice that you see in the video yourself, and this will prepare you so you're then ready to split up your own SharePoint lists in your own environment. So I've got an Excel practice file which I called Wise Industries Sales. I'm going to open that up, and you can go ahead and create your practice list by just following the steps that I show. So in this list, if you go to Table Design, there is an option to export the table to a SharePoint list. That's what we're going to do. Okay, you do need to provide the URL of your SharePoint site, so I'm going to go ahead and paste that in right now. And I'm going to give it a name. So I'll just stick with the name of the workbook, and that is Wise Industries Sales. And then I just click Next. It just gives you a confirmation to tell you the different field types. You really can't adjust or modify using this process, but everything generally looks fine here, so I can just click Finish. Okay, I'll get a little progress bar. It says adding records. There's only 100 records, so it can do this very quickly. And that's all I need my workbook for, so I can go ahead and exit out of Excel. So hopefully you can follow along and do the example I'm showing. If I go into my site content screen, I'm going to find that I have a new list called Wise Industry Sales. Let me do a refresh. Got a lot of things going on in this site. There it is, it's at the bottom. Okay, so let me click on the list. Now, the method I use to create the list, it makes it default into a grid view, but I can turn that off. So this isn't something you'll need to do on your list normally, but since I brought that in from Excel, I'm going to go to List Settings, and advanced settings. I want to turn off that grid view. So that is the quick property editing setting. I'll just turn that off. While I'm in here, I'll go ahead and set the list experience to new experience. And that's fine. Let's go ahead and make another adjustment. I'm going to show the count of records. So I'm going to go to the title column header, go to totals and count. And you'll see we have 100 records here. Okay, so in our practice, of course, 100 records is no big deal, but we're just using this to practice. And everything I'm showing you, this is what you will later apply to your own list, where you have 10,000 records or 20,000 records or however many you have, but we're just going to use this small set to do our practice work. Okay, so what we're going to do in the rest of this, we're going to set up a Power Automate flow to go ahead and perform our operations for the list. Now to prepare for that, I'm actually going to make my second list. We're getting ready for what I described as splitting the SharePoint list. So I'm going to make another list called Wise Industry Sales, and I'm going to call it 2020, 2021. So in other words, I'm just going to get the records that are older. So if you look in here, we've got invoice date ascending, and you'll see they go through 2020, 2021, 22, and 23. So we're going to split up our list according to that date. Okay, so how do I make a copy of my list? I just need to go to Site Contents, and I'll do New List. And one of your options is from an existing list, and that's how you'll do it. And by doing that, it gives you this selection screen where I can select one of the lists that are already in my site, and that's exactly what I want to do. Now when I copy that list, I'm going to rename it. So I'm going to say 2020, 2021, and click create. And the new list will just be a copy of that. Now you will see an error message, or at least I normally see that. Don't despair. It did what it's supposed to do. This is just kind of a hiccup in the UI. If I cancel out of this, what you'll find out, in fact, is that your list is created just fine. So don't think that you did something wrong. Okay, so now I've got these two lists, which is what I want. So here's my original list that now has 100 records in it, and the second list, of course, has no records. And I'm going to apply that same setting in the second list. I'm going to turn off the quick property editing. Again, normally you don't have to do this. This is just because I created my list by using the export from Excel option, which causes it to display in a grid mode, but not a big deal. I'll just turn that off, and then I'm going to go to the home screen for my second list, and I'm going to want to see counts on this too, so I'll turn that on. And right now we don't have any records, so there's nothing to count on, but that'll be handy later. Let's go ahead and get two tabs going so we can look at both lists simultaneously. So one's going to be the list we're moving records over to, and one's going to be our original list. So let me go to Wise Industries Sales. All right, so at this stage we're ready to do our operation, our workflow to move records over. So the idea here is we have one original list that's got 100 records in it, and then we have our second copy of that list, which at the moment has no records. What I'm going to do is copy records that are from these years, 2020 and 2021, and I'm going to afterwards delete them off the original list. So in other words, you could think of it like a cut and paste operation, just like you would hit Control X and Control V on your keyboard. It's really the same concept. Okay, so let's go ahead and go over to Power Automate now. And I'm going to do a new flow, and this will be an instant cloud flow. And I'm going to say split Wise Industries Sales. Okay, it will be manually trigger flow. I'll click create. And the first thing I need to do is get all the items in the original list. So that's a SharePoint get items flow block. So I just pick get items, and then I just need to browse to my site. I know it's this one, and my list name, which is called Wise Industry Sales. Okay, and then down here I need to do show advanced options. And what I want to do is not get all of the items. I just need to get the ones I'm going to move over. So I need to use the filter query to do that. This is really a key part of splitting up your SharePoint list. Now you could use whatever criteria you want. In my case, what I'm interested in is moving them based on this field invoice date. And so in here I need to type in the name of the field, invoice date, and I'm going to say all the records that are less than, so I use this command LT, an abbreviation for less than. I need to put 2 single quotes, and then I need to type in the date. So since I want records for 2020 and 2021 in the second list, I need to get all of those. So I'm going to do 01, 01, 2022. Okay, in other words, bring me back all of the records in the original list that are before January 1, 2022. Okay, and then what I also should do is go to the settings for the get items, and in our case there's only 100 records and it wouldn't impact, but in your situation when you're actually doing this operation on this extremely large list that may have 20,000 records in it, you must turn on pagination. And usually what I will do is just set the threshold at 5,000, and it will actually bring all the records back for you. So just click done, and then everything should be set up. Now for each of those records I'm going to do a couple of operations. So we need the apply to each, and it means for each one of the records it brings back I can do my operation. So just pick the first option here when you put in the value in your drop down picker, and now I am ready to go. So we need to do 2 things. We need to create the copy of the record in the second list, and after that operation we need to delete the original record from the first list, and that is everything that we'll need to do. So first is create item, so SharePoint create item. Okay, and then I need to go and select my site again. This time I'm selecting the second list. I'm creating an item in the second list. So this is going to be Wise Industry Sales 2020, 2021. And now we're going to just map over the fields. Now what's nice is this is really easy because the fields in the first list and the fields in the second list are identical. They're exactly the same. So I can just literally walk down here and I'm just mapping a 1-to-1. So I want title and title, invoice date, and so on. It just really can't be any easier at this step. So just walk right down your fields and put the same values in. Okay, so I'm just scrolling my way down the screen, and I'll just keep doing this until I have all my stuff in there. And then I just need to pick the state. There's the state, zip, there's zip, email, there's email, sales amount, there's that. Got 2 more to do, need category, and phone. Okay, so that's all set, and then we need the delete action. So after it's created that record, I don't need that record in the original list. That's the whole point of this. We're trying to get that list to shrink down so that we don't have the other problems I talked about earlier. So that is the delete item action. And I just select that, delete item from SharePoint. Once again, I need to keep selecting the website, and then in this case I'm selecting the original list. I'm removing the item from the original list. And then I just pick the ID. Be careful which you're referencing. In fact, I picked the wrong thing. I was moving too quick. Okay, we need the ID from the get items, okay? I'm actually glad I made that mistake because now you'll not make that mistake. So this get items is pulling back all of the records from the original list. We need the ID from that because that is what needs to be removed. So make sure you do not do what I was getting ready to do. Make sure you pick the ID from get items, okay? And that's everything. I can go ahead and save, and then I'm ready to kick this off. Now we have 100 records, so it's going to go relatively quick. Of course, when you're doing your large list, you're going to just kick this off and walk away and let it do its work, because it, of course, is going to take a pretty good chunk of time if it's processing thousands of records. So go ahead and click run and continue and run that flow, and then you can check your status and refresh on the screen, and we can watch this do its work. Now I set the item count so we can watch the progress. So we know it's creating items and deleting items. There we go. Now we see 18 records in the new list that we created, and then we're going to see the number of records in the original list go down. So you can see the work happening. Now we're down to 65, and let's do another refresh here. Now there's 49 records here, and we have 42 records here. We can keep checking on here. We'll just watch and let it finish. So this took 38 seconds. That's because we had 100 records. So obviously you could kind of multiply that time out. You know, if I was doing 1,000 records, it would take 10 times as long. If I was doing 10,000 records, you know, that's 100 times as long. So just understand you're setting this up. You're going to kind of kick this off and walk away from it. And obviously you can repeat this. You could have multiple lists. So in my case, I just made one copy, but maybe I do something like archive 2020 and archive 2021, or however I want to name those. But now I'm going to have those split off into separate SharePoint lists. So you can see it was according to the date filter we used, as I intended. These invoices with dates in 2020 and 2021 have all been moved over. And now I have a nice lean list for my main list, which is my current dates, right? So these are the 2022 and 2023 sales dates. And that is going to remove some of those hassles and headaches that we have with the large lists. Okay, I hope you found that useful. And again, this is for helping you in a situation where you have an unwieldy SharePoint list. It's grown and grown and grown, and now you have tens of thousands of records in it, and you're getting problems in SharePoint. You're getting error messages, you're having problems with your review. This is a bloated list. And in that situation, that's when you're going to be able to reach for the process that we just went through and say, you know what? I can solve problems and remove these headaches if I split my SharePoint list and break it apart. So I can make archive versions of that list, and then I'm going to remove those performance issues and problems that I run into SharePoint, especially when I go past that list view threshold of 5,000 records. So I hope you found that handy. And even if you don't use Power Automate a lot, I hope you find that really the setup for this is pretty easy. If you just move slowly through that, there's really just a few operations that you're doing there. I hope you found that useful, and I hope next time you run into problems with a bloated SharePoint list, you realize that you can split that up into multiple lists in SharePoint and make all your problems go away. Good luck!